The first time they called me the help, I was holding a tray of crystal glasses that cost more than my monthly rent. And the worst part, it wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Loud, public, cruel. They wanted everyone in that room to hear it. They wanted me to feel small. What they didn't know was that in less than 10 seconds, every single person there would fall silent, staring at me like they'd just watched a ghost stand up and speak. And the ones who laughed the loudest, they would never recover from what happened next. Before we get into this story, if you believe that disrespect always comes back to the sender, take a second to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel reach more people who love stories about revenge, justice, and turning the tables. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? My name is Erin Price. And this is the night they mistook me for the help and accidentally destroyed their own lives. I still remember the smell of that house. Lemon polish, expensive candles, and something cold beneath it all, like money had a scent. Sharp, sterile, unwelcoming. The kind of smell that says, you don't belong here. I stood in the kitchen doorway, fingers tight around the silver tray, watching the guests filter into the living room. Their laughter floated through the air like champagne bubbles. Light, carefree, completely unaware of the storm building just a few feet away. Make sure you smile, my cousin Olivia had whispered earlier, handing me the tray, and try not to look awkward. Awkward. The word strung more than it should have. Because Olivia knew exactly what she was doing. She always had. We grew up together, same town, same schools, same childhood Christmas dinners. But somewhere along the way, our lives split in two completely different directions. Her family struck oil, metaphorically speaking, investments, real estate connections. Mine didn't. My dad's medical bills swallowed everything after his stroke, then my mom passed 2 years later. By 26, I was juggling 2 jobs and a mountain of debt, while Olivia was hosting charity galas in houses with marble staircases. And somehow, that difference had turned into her favorite weapon. She didn't just succeed. She needed me to see it. To feel it. To drown in it. Erin, she called now from across the kitchen, her voice syrupy sweet. Guests are arriving. Go ahead and serve drinks. Serve. Not help with drinks. Serve. Like staff. Like hired help. Like I wasn't family at all. My throat tightened, but I nodded. Because I needed this. Not the humiliation. The job. She promised to introduce me to someone at her company, a senior executive, someone who could help me finally escape the financial hole I'd been trapped in for years. So I told myself to endure. Just endure tonight. Smiled. Stay quiet. Don't react. I stepped into the living room, heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The room fell into that strange social hush that happens when someone unfamiliar enters. Eyes moved toward me. Some curious, some indifferent, some already dismissive. I felt their gaze skim over my simple black dress, my modest heels, my lack of jewelry. And I knew what they saw. Not Olivia's cousin. Not an equal. A service worker. Invisible. And then it happened. Olivia laughed loudly, clinking her glass to get everyone's attention. Oh, perfect timing, she said brightly. Everyone, this is Erin, she's helping out tonight. Helping out. A lie wrapped in politeness. Someone chuckled. Then another voice chimed in. Oh, how nice, it's hard to find reliable help these days. Laughter rippled through the room. My chest tightened. The tray felt heavier in my hands. I told myself to breathe. Ignore it. Just get through the night. But Olivia wasn't finished. She stepped closer, draping an arm around my shoulder in a gesture that looked affectionate to outsiders. It was. Her fingers dug into my skin. And then she said it. Clear. Loud. smiling. Honestly, she's practically family, but tonight she's the help. The room erupted into polite, uncomfortable laughter. My ears rang. My vision blurred. Heat rushed to my face as if the air itself had turned to fire. In that moment, I felt something crack inside me. Not like breaking. Like something freezing solid. Because this wasn't just embarrassment. It was betrayal. Calculated. Public. Intentional. And worse. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, so only I could hear. Maybe now you'll finally know your place. The words hit harder than any slap. For a split second I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. All I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. Then someone reached for a drink from my tray. Red wine, please. Their voice snapped me back to reality. And that's when I saw it. The man standing near the fireplace. Tall, grey-haired, sharp suit. Watching me. Not with pity. Not with amusement. With recognition. My stomach dropped. Because I knew that face. I knew it very, very well. And so did Olivia. But she hadn't noticed him yet. Not when she mocked me. Not when she laughed. Not when she sealed her own fate. Because the man she had just humiliated in front of was the one person in that room she needed to impress most. And he was staring directly at me. Waiting for me to speak. And in less than 10 seconds, everything would change. The second our eyes locked, my pulse stumbled. Because that man wasn't just some guest. He wasn't just wealthy. He wasn't just powerful. He was the asterisk reason I was even standing in that house that night. And the last person Olivia should ever have insulted through me. His name was Daniel Hargrove. And 3 months earlier, he had personally told me, "Erin, when you're ready, come see me. You don't belong where you are now." At the time, I thought he was just being kind. Encouraging. Polite. I had no idea how serious he meant it. Until that moment. Because now he wasn't smiling. He wasn't nodding politely. He was watching the scene unfold like a judge listening to a verdict being read. And I realized something chilling. He had heard everything. Every laugh. Every cruel word. Every ounce of Olivia's arrogance. My fingers trembled against the tray. For a moment, I considered pretending not to know him. Pretending to be exactly what they believed I was. Invisible. Small. Safe. Because stepping forward meant confrontation. It meant attention. It meant exposing everything. And after years of being overlooked, a part of me was terrified of being seen. But then Olivia leaned closer again, her voice low and cutting. "Try not to spill anything," she whispered. "You'd never afford to replace it." That was it. The final spark. Something inside me went very, very quiet. Calm in a way that felt almost dangerous. Because humiliation burns hot. But clarity is ice cold. I took one steady breath. Then I stepped forward. Not toward the guests. Toward him. The room didn't notice at first. They were too busy chatting, laughing, sipping their expensive wine. But Daniel Hargrove noticed. His posture straightened instantly. And when I reached him, I did something no one in that room expected. I handed the tray to a passing waiter. Then I extended my hand. "Mr. Hargrove," I said clearly, "it's good to see you again." The room froze. The effect was instant and absolute. Like someone had cut the power. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses paused halfway to lips. Heads turned sharply. Because suddenly, the help wasn't behaving like help at all. Daniel's expression shifted. Not to surprise, To warmth, respect. He took my hand firmly. Erin Price, he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. I was wondering when you'd arrive. And then he smiled. The kind of smile that only powerful people give when they're acknowledging an equal. Not a servant. Not a subordinate. An equal. You could feel the shock ripple through the room like a wave. Olivia's face drained of colour. Her lips parted. She looked between us, confusion turning rapidly into panic. Why, you know her, she stammered. Daniel turned slowly toward her. And for the first time that evening, his expression hardened. Of course I know her, he said calmly. Then he added the sentence that shattered everything. She's the candidate I've been considering for our Director of Strategic Operations position. Silence. Pure. Total. Devastating silence. You could hear someone's ice cube crack inside their glass. I saw Olivia physically sway. Because she knew exactly what that meant. That role was the biggest hire of the year. A 6-figure salary. Direct reporting to Daniel himself. The same position she had been bragging all night about helping fill. The same role she had promised to introduce me to. She had no idea. I was already the leading candidate. Her mouth opened but no sound came out. Guests looked between us, their earlier amusement now replaced with deep discomfort. Because suddenly their laughter had context. Suddenly it had consequences. Daniel's voice remained calm, but it cut like glass. I must say, he continued, I'm surprised to see Erin serving drinks. His eyes flicked toward Olivia. Especially at an event hosted by family. The word *family landed like a slap. Olivia swallowed hard. I didn't realize. Daniel interrupted, still polite, still controlled. But you were very clear about what you did realize. His gaze moved slowly around the room. And so was everyone else. No one spoke. No one moved. Because now the power dynamics had flipped completely. And everyone knew it. Olivia tried to recover, her voice shaky. Oh my God, Erin, I was just joking. You know how I am, I didn't mean. I looked at her then. Really looked at her. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. The kind that comes when someone realizes they've misjudged a situation so badly there's no way back. For years she had controlled the narrative between us. She was the successful one. The admired one. The powerful one. And I was the struggling cousin. The quiet one. The background character in her story. But tonight, the roles had reversed. And she knew it. Daniel spoke again, his tone now unmistakably cold. In my experience, he said, how people treat those they believe have no power tells you everything about their character. He paused, then added, and their suitability to represent my company. That sentence landed like a guillotine. Because Olivia worked under one of his divisions. And everyone knew it. A whisper of tension moved through the guests. Careers were at stake now. Reputations. Future opportunities. Olivia's composure shattered. Please, she said quickly, stepping closer. It was a misunderstanding. Erin, tell him I was kidding. All eyes turned to me. Waiting. Holding their breaths. For my response. And in that moment, I felt something unexpected. Not anger. Not triumph. Clarity. Crystal clear clarity. Because for years I had accepted being diminished. I had tolerated the small insults. The subtle digs. The endless comparisons. But standing there now, I understood something powerful. Silence protects the oppressor, not the victim. So I met Daniel's gaze. Then I looked back at Olivia. And I spoke the words that sealed her fate. No, I said quietly. You weren't joking. The room exhaled sharply. Olivia's face crumpled. And in that instant, her world began to collapse. But she had no idea yet. This was only the beginning. Because what happened next wouldn't just cost her embarrassment. It would cost her everything she had built. Everything she believed she controlled. And everything she thought she could take from me without consequence. Olivia's eyes locked onto mine, wide and desperate. It was the first time in our entire lives that she wasn't looking down at me. She wasn't confident. She wasn't smug. She wasn't in control. She was scared. And not just embarrassed scared. Career ending, life altering, asterisk everything slipping through her fingers scared. For a split second I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because fear has a way of reminding you that someone is human. But then something else flooded back. The nights I cried alone in my apartment after family gatherings. The way she'd casually compare my life to hers in front of others. The whispered comments about my clothes. My job. My finances. My lack of ambition. The quiet, steady erosion of my dignity that had lasted years. And most of all, that sentence she'd whispered minutes earlier. Maybe now you'll finally know your place. No, this wasn't cruelty. This was consequence. Daniel Hargrove spoke again, his voice calm but heavy with authority. Erin, he said, would you mind stepping into the study with me for a moment? Every head turned. Because when a man like him asked for a private conversation, it meant decisions were about to be made. Serious ones. I nodded. My legs felt strangely light as I followed him out of the living room. Behind me the air remained thick with tension. I could feel dozens of eyes burning into my back. And Olivia's gaze most of all. The study door closed softly. The moment it shut, the noise from the party faded into a distant murmur. The room was dim, lined with dark wood shelves and framed awards. A place built for power conversations. Daniel didn't sit immediately. He watched me for a long moment. Not evaluating. Not judging. Understanding. I owe you an apology, he said quietly. The words caught me off guard. For what, I asked. For putting you in a position where you had to endure that, he replied. I knew you were related to the host. I assumed you'd be treated with respect. A bitter laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Assumptions can be dangerous, I said. He nodded slowly. Yes, they can. He gestured toward a chair. Please sit. I did. And for the first time since arriving, my body realized how exhausted it was. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. Daniel sat across from me. Erin, he said, his tone shifting to something more serious, I want to ask you something directly. I straightened. All right. Why, he asked gently, did you agree to be treated like that tonight? The question hit deeper than anything else had. Because it wasn't about Olivia. It was about me. My choices. My silence. My endurance. I swallowed hard. Because I needed an opportunity, I admitted, and I thought if I just stayed quiet long enough it would come. My voice cracked slightly. I thought being patient meant being strong. Daniel's gaze softened. Patience is strength, he said, but self-respect is stronger. The words landed heavily. Like something I had needed to hear for years. He leaned forward slightly. I want you to understand something very clearly, he continued. You are not here because of charity. You are not here because of family connections. He held my gaze. You are here because you are the most qualified candidate I have interviewed in 10 years. My throat tightened. Emotion surged unexpectedly. Because those words, they weren't pity. They were recognition. The kind I had fought so hard to earn. But, he added carefully, there is something else you need to know. My stomach dropped. What is it? He exhaled slowly. Olivia recommended you to our HR department 6 months ago. The room seemed to tilt. What? I whispered. Yes, he said, but not in the way you think. My chest tightened. He continued. She described you as unreliable, emotionally unstable, and not suited for leadership roles. Each word felt like a physical blow. Cold. Precise. Calculated. She told us hiring you would be a mistake, he finished quietly. For a moment I couldn't breathe. The betrayal cut deeper than anything she had done publicly. Because this had been done in secret. Behind my back. Where I had no chance to defend myself. Where she could quietly sabotage my future without anyone ever knowing. My hands clenched into fists. And suddenly everything made sense. Every job rejection. Every opportunity that seemed to vanish without explanation. Every time I wondered why doors closed just as they began to open. She hadn't just mocked me. She had been quietly trying to keep me trapped. Small. Dependent. Inferior. The realization burned through me like fire. I didn't believe her, Daniel said calmly. Your credentials and interviews spoke for themselves. He paused. But I never told you about her interference, because I wanted to see how you handled adversity. My eyes snapped to his. And now I know. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Electric. He leaned back slightly. Which brings me to the reason I asked you here. My pulse quickened. He looked at me steadily. I'm offering you the director position tonight. The words hit like thunder. Not hope. Not possibility. Certainty. You've earned it, he said, and after what I just witnessed, I trust your character completely. Tears burned in my eyes. Not from sadness. From release. Years of struggle. Years of feeling unseen. Years of quiet endurance. All culminating in this moment. I nodded slowly. Yes, I whispered, I accept. He smiled. Good. Then his expression shifted again. Serious. Measured. There is one more thing, he said. My stomach tightened. What? He folded his hands. Olivia is currently being considered for a regional leadership promotion. The room went very still. And after tonight, he continued, I will be making a decision about her future as well. A strange calm settled over me. Because I knew what that meant. This wasn't just about my rise. It was about her fall. And Daniel's next words confirmed it. How that decision unfolds, he said carefully, depends entirely on whether you choose to pursue a formal complaint. My heart pounded. Because now, the final move wasn't his. It was mine. And whatever I chose next would determine whether Olivia merely lost face tonight. Or lost everything. The moment Daniel said the choice was mine, the room seemed to shrink around me. Not physically. Emotionally. Because suddenly I wasn't the powerless one anymore. I wasn't the girl holding a tray while people laughed. I wasn't the cousin who swallowed every insult to keep the peace. I was the one holding the outcome in my hands. And that kind of power, it's heavier than people think. For a few seconds I couldn't speak. Not because I didn't know what I wanted, but because my mind was racing through years of memories. Every humiliation, every backhanded compliment, every time Olivia had smiled sweetly while quietly cutting me down. And then the deeper betrayal Daniel had revealed. Her secret sabotage. The lies she told about me to keep me from moving forward. That wasn't rivalry. That wasn't insecurity. That was calculated harm. And it had lasted years. I inhaled slowly. My voice, when I finally spoke, was steady. Yes, I said. I want to file the complaint. Daniel nodded once. No surprise. No hesitation. Just quiet acknowledgement. Understood, he said. He stood. So let's do this properly. When we stepped back into the living room, the atmosphere had completely changed. The party was still technically happening, but no one was relaxed anymore. Conversations were hushed. Forced. Eyes flicked constantly toward Olivia. Toward me. Toward Daniel. Like everyone was waiting for a verdict to drop. Olivia stood near the bar, her posture rigid. Her smile was gone. Her makeup couldn't hide how pale she'd become. The moment she saw us return together, she knew. She knew this wasn't over. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was escalation. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When powerful people speak quietly, rooms listen. Ladies and gentlemen, he said calmly. The chatter died instantly. I want to thank our host for the evening. His tone was polite, but there was no warmth in it. However, I need to address something important before I leave. You could feel the tension snap tight. Olivia's fingers clenched around her wine glass. Earlier tonight, he continued, I witnessed behavior that is inconsistent with the values of my organization. No one breathed. And since those actions were directed at one of our future senior leaders, I must respond accordingly. Gasps rippled through the room. Future senior leader. He wasn't being vague anymore. He was making it public. Official. Permanent. Daniel turned toward me. Effective immediately, he announced, Erin Price has accepted the role of Director of Strategic Operations. The silence that followed was almost surreal. Shock. Pure shock. Because everyone in that room understood exactly how significant that position was. Some people stared at me. Others stared at Olivia. Because the contrast was brutal. One rising. One collapsing. And then Daniel delivered the final blow. Additionally, he said, his voice now cool and sharp, due to documented conduct violations and ethical concerns, Olivia Price is being placed under immediate review pending termination. The room erupted in whispers. Olivia's glass slipped from her hand. It hit the floor. Shattered. Just like her composure. Why you can't do this, she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel's expression didn't change. I can, he replied simply. And I am. She turned to me then. Desperate. Panicked. Erin, please, she said, stepping closer. Her eyes were wet now. Red. Raw. I'm sorry, I was jealous, okay? I was scared you. Catch up to me. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Her words tumbled over each other. I needed to feel like I was ahead. The admission hung heavy in the air. Because finally, she was telling the truth. But the truth came years too late. I looked at her calmly. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small next to her. I didn't feel overshadowed. I didn't feel hurt. I just felt clear. You didn't want to stay ahead, I said quietly. You wanted to keep me down. She flinched. Tears spilled freely now. I never tried to hurt you, she whispered. I met her gaze steadily. You already did. Silence fell again. Heavy. Final. Because there was nothing left to argue. Nothing left to justify. Only consequences. Security arrived shortly after, politely but firmly escorting her out. The guests avoided eye contact. Some looked ashamed. Others looked relieved. Because power had shifted and they all knew it. And as the front door closed behind Olivia, a strange quiet settled over the house. like a storm had passed and left the air clean. Weeks later, I stood in my new office on the 27th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the wall. The city glowed beneath me, alive, full of possibility. I thought about that night often, not with bitterness, but with clarity, because the real revenge wasn't her losing her job, or her reputation, or her status. The real revenge was that she could no longer define me. For years she controlled the narrative of who I was. Small, dependent, less than. But the moment I spoke the truth, that narrative shattered. And I finally understood something powerful. Silence protects disrespect. Speaking ends it. I never saw Olivia again after that night. I heard she moved cities, started over somewhere new. Maybe she learned something from it. Maybe she didn't. But that part no longer mattered, because my story had moved forward, and hers had been left behind. If this story reminded you that respect is never something you beg for, it's something you claim, make sure to like and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been underestimated, only to prove everyone wrong later? Because sometimes the quietest people are just waiting for the right moment to be heard.